You think they don't care that you left, that they're unfazed watching you move on, without begging, without glancing back. That's the illusion they want you to believe. But the truth is, your exit was a direct hit to the most fragile part of their identity, the narcissistic ego that hides behind false confidence. They never truly believed you'd leave. Not you, the one who forgave the unforgivable, who endured in silence, who returned even when you knew you deserved so much more. In the twisted world of narcissistic abuse, your return was never a hope. It was an expectation. They counted on your guilt to bind you. They bet on your empathy. They lived off the belief that you'd soften, that you'd give them just one more last chance. But when you didn't come back, when your silence stretched longer than any of their manipulations could reach, it stopped being anticipation. It became the beginning of their collapse. At first, they pretend not to care. Then they rewrite the story, casting themselves as the victim and painting you as the cold-hearted traitor. But behind that mask is growing chaos, panic, shame, rage, and the terrifying realization that they've lost control over you for good. In today's video, you'll witness the full unraveling of a narcissist when you don't return, from their hollow arrogance and manipulative apologies to smear campaigns, and finally to the silent implosion they can no longer hide. Stay with us until the end, because understanding their collapse is how you protect your freedom. And if you're on a healing journey or ready to turn awareness into power, subscribe now. We move forward together, never looking back. Stage 1. Denial. She'll come back. She always does. When you walk away, the narcissist's first reaction isn't sadness or regret, it's denial. A smug, self-reassuring thought, she's just being dramatic. He'll be back, like always. In their distorted world, your leaving isn't real, because they never truly believed you had the strength to do it. They underestimated you. Or, more accurately, they never saw you as someone with limits. To a narcissist, your departure doesn't fit the script they've written. You're supposed to forgive, to yield, to blame yourself for overreacting. In their mind, you're just playing a part, testing them, and they think, she'll be back, she always comes back. This confidence doesn't stem from love, it stems from control. They've grown used to your softness. They've grown used to your fear of losing them. They've grown used to the cycle: hurt, fake apology, forgiveness, repeat. And because you forgave too many times, they assumed you'd never truly walk away. So they carry on as if nothing happened, posting photos, pretending they're fine, acting better than ever. Maybe they drop a few vague hints, a cryptic story, a sad song, a deep quote online. Not because they miss you, but because they want to see if you'll react. Your reaction is their gauge. Proof that they still have power over you. If you stay silent, no messages, no engagement, no curiosity, they begin to feel unsettled. But that unease is still masked with denial. She's just trying to look strong. He won't last long, and if days turn into weeks and you still haven't returned, their denial must now battle a rising discomfort, doubt. But they won't let themselves admit that. Instead, they double down on the performance. They continue pretending. Sometimes they even jump into a new relationship, desperate to send the message, "Look, I'm fine without you." But understand this, it's not strength. It's fear of losing their role in your mind. Denial isn't just about avoiding the truth. It's their way of shielding a fragile ego from direct impact with reality. Because if they admit that you've really left, it means they've lost the control they thought was permanent. At this stage, you don't need to react. Your silence is the antidote to their illusion. And what terrifies them more than any confrontation is this: you're not confronting them at all. Because when you stop trying to explain, stop trying to make them understand, stop trying to be heard, they lose the last string that connects them to your attention. Denial is where their ego still clings to the story. But day by day, hour by hour, your calm, your silence, your refusal to play, that's what begins to fracture the mask. And when the mask starts to crack, stage 2 begins. Rage. Stage 2. Rage. When your silence becomes unbearable. When the mask of denial begins to crack, the narcissist shifts into an emotion they can no longer hide. Rage. But it's not the rage of heartbreak or regret. It's the rage of someone who is losing control and cannot accept it. Your silence doesn't just confuse them, it insults them. In their mind, you're supposed to be doing what you always do, reacting, reaching out, explaining, and when you don't, when you stay quiet and composed, it shakes the core of their illusion that they are the one in charge. This is when they become aggressive, not necessarily with violence, but with sharp words, calculated provocations, and manipulative gestures. They start doing everything they can to make you respond, any kind of response, because to them, your silence is humiliation, and that, to a narcissist, is intolerable. They may call you a traitor. They'll twist the story, smear your name, paint you as the unstable one. They'll play the victim, remind everyone of how much they endured with you, but the only goal is simple: hurt you enough to make you speak. If you've moved on with someone else, their rage doubles, not because they love you, but because they cannot stand the idea that you could be happy without them. In their distorted belief, you were only ever allowed to feel whole if they were part of the picture. To see you move forward without asking permission, without explaining yourself, without seeking closure, it offends them, and they want revenge. This is when they become dangerous, not because they want you back, but because they can't stand that you no longer want them. Their motivation isn't love, it's control. And when they can no longer control you, they will attempt to trigger your pain, just to prove that they still matter. If you react, even with anger, explanation, or self-defense, they'll take it as proof. See, they still care, and in that moment they feel like they won again. But if you stay silent, if you remain grounded, if you don't respond, don't retaliate, their rage has nowhere to go. It begins to implode, and in that implosion the mask begins to fall. They may lash out publicly, smear your name, or use someone new to try and trigger jealousy. But the more you stand firm, the more transparent their desperation becomes. You're now witnessing someone who once believed they had all the power, slowly unraveling in the face of your silence. They don't know how to handle stillness. They don't know how to face invisibility. And when they can't provoke you with rage, they move into a darker phase, rewriting the narrative entirely, turning you into the villain to protect the crumbling ego inside. Stage 3, the victim act and story rewriting. When you won't react, they rewrite the script. When all attempts to provoke you fail, when your silence can't be broken by anger, guilt, or manipulation, the narcissist resorts to a familiar but insidious tactic. They cast themselves as the victim in the very story where they were once the abuser. In their distorted reality, your silence is no longer seen as peace, it becomes coldness. Your self-control is no longer strength, it's cruelty. They begin to retell the story from a new perspective, one where they are the wounded, abandoned, betrayed party, and you become the heartless, emotionless, ungrateful one. They share this twisted narrative with friends, acquaintances, even new partners. Half-truths carefully edited into a version that paints them as someone who loved too much, who held on for too long, who tried their best with someone who never appreciated them. And when others buy into the act, they feel rescued. They don't need your response. Just someone, anyone, who validates this new role helps them patch their crumbling ego. They may even send you accidental messages, morally coded lines like, "I'm sorry if I hurt you, I truly gave it everything," or subtle guilt trips like, "I just don't understand how you could be so cold after everything." But these are not apologies. These are lines from a script designed to preserve the image of the good person who got left behind. The more silent you remain, the more they need to invent a version of you that justifies their pain. And in that version, you're no longer yourself, you're whatever they need you to be. so they don't have to face the truth that they were the one who destroyed the relationship. This stage is especially dangerous for anyone still hoping they'll change, because when they start playing the wounded soul, showing vulnerability, appearing remorseful, you might waver, you might question, was I too harsh? Did I hurt them more than I realized? But don't be fooled. That's performance, not transformation. That's a reaction to losing control, not real remorse. And if they see that twisting the story works on others, they might try to project it onto you. They'll subtly plant doubt in your mind. Maybe it was me who gave up too soon. Maybe they weren't as bad as I thought. But remember, truth doesn't live in flowery words or soft eyes. Truth lives in patterns, repeated actions, the cycles they never broke, the apologies they never followed through. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to correct the narrative. You're no longer living in their version of the story. Truth speaks for itself, and time always sides with it. As for you, you don't need to compete for a role in their new performance, because you're now writing a different story, one with no room for distorted scripts and narcissistic actors. Stage 4. They try to replace you, but nothing fills the void. After the rage, after the victim act, after rewriting the story fails to pull you back or provoke a reaction, the narcissist enters a phase of desperation, disguised as reinvention. They begin to replace you. A new person appears, maybe quickly, maybe loudly. Suddenly, they're posting joyful photos, public declarations, showing off a peaceful new love. But don't be fooled. This isn't love. It's panic dressed up in performance. When you left, you didn't just walk away as a partner. You took with you their primary source, the person they could control, extract supply from, and use to validate their false power. And when you no longer react, no longer serve as a mirror, they scramble to find a replacement, not for your presence, but for your function. The new person isn't chosen out of connection, but because they need someone, anyone, to fill the emptiness your absence left behind. They'll attempt to recreate your relationship, same habits, same phrases, same routines, but now with a different face. They'll project what you once gave them onto someone new. This is not about healing. It's about trying to prove, to you and to themselves, that they didn't lose anything. But what they can't recreate is the emotion. The new partner may smile, cooperate, even fall for the mask at first, but soon the manipulation, the control, the cycles resurface, and the narcissist falls into the same pattern again. Meanwhile, you remain silent, unshaken, free. And that silence drives them mad, because now they begin to realize something deeper. This new person can't do what you once did. Love them deeply despite the pain. This person doesn't come trauma-bond, doesn't carry history, doesn't feel obligated to stay. And when that person starts to see the mask slip or walks away without the weight of guilt, the void grows wider, deeper, harder to deny. That's when the narcissist might circle back to you. They may show up with apologies, accidental memories, regrets about their new partner, lines like, "No one gets me like you do." But by now you understand, this isn't love. It's a last-ditch effort to reclaim control. And if you maintain your silence, if you don't save them from the emptiness they created, they'll be forced to face what they fear most, the truth that no one can replace you. Not because you're irreplaceable, but because no one can fill the void when they themselves haven't changed. Stage 5. The real collapse begins. After all the rage, the performances, the replacements, and even the desperate attempts to reconnect fall into silence, the real collapse begins. This is no longer a stage where they can pretend. There's no mask to wear, no audience left to manipulate, no reflection to borrow from. When your silence becomes absolute, when you stop explaining, stop needing to win, they fall into a space they've avoided their entire life. true emptiness. For the narcissist, life isn't lived through genuine emotion, it's lived through the reflection of others. They don't possess an identity, they borrow one from being the center of yours. But now that world no longer opens its door to them. They can't fake it anymore. The new people see through them. The old narratives no longer work, and you, the strongest source of their supply, have disappeared completely, leaving no signal, no hook, no reaction they can use. This moment is brutal, because they haven't just lost you, they've lost the illusion of self that was built on your attention. They might try to fill this void with work, distractions, even spirituality or claims of awakening. But everything is surface. Beneath it lies an unhealed self, a wounded child trapped in an adult's body. And no one on the outside can fix that. Not you, not someone new. Not an apology. Only they, in solitude, facing their own hollowness, can begin to see the truth. But here's the problem. Most narcissists don't want to heal. They don't want to face their real wounds because that would require surrendering control, removing the mask, and accepting responsibility for the harm they've caused. They can't stand being out of the spotlight. They can't endure being irrelevant. And your silence, your graceful detachment, is the clearest reflection yet. You're no longer held, no longer conditioned, no longer orbiting them. They may shrink into isolation, become quiet, withdrawn, or swing the other way, lashing out, becoming erratic, trying harder than ever to control those around them. But regardless of how it appears on the surface, the internal reality is the same, an undeniable collapse. And you, the one they once labeled weak, too emotional, too dependent, you're the one who endured, not because you beat them, but because you stopped playing the game. You don't need to witness their collapse to feel justice, because your true freedom didn't come from their pain. It came from the fact that their pain no longer dictates your return. Stage 6. The fake awakening. When everything else has collapsed, no one left to mirror them, no one left to manipulate, and you no longer there to respond, the narcissist enters their final, most deceptive phase, the performance of awakening. There is no more rage, no more victim stories. This time, they return in a new costume, introspective, calm, remorseful, enlightened. They may start posting reflective quotes. They might tell you they've started therapy, read books, learned emotional regulation, and most importantly, that they've finally seen the truth. But make no mistake, real growth doesn't come with an agenda to win you back. Real awakening doesn't hinge on whether you forgive them. True change means transforming without requiring validation from the one you hurt. But for the narcissist, "I've changed" is not a process, it's a tactic. It's their last attempt to regain their central role in your story, one more time. They know rage didn't work, playing the victim didn't work, replacing you didn't work, so what's left? "I've really changed. I know I was wrong. No one ever loved me like you did." These words aren't said to bring you peace. They're said to reignite the bond, but this time with upgraded manipulation. You may hesitate because you once loved deeply. You once begged them to understand. You longed for the day they'd say these exact things. And now, here they are, saying all of it. Even using the language you once prayed they'd speak. But look closely. Are they doing this for you or to keep you? Are they truly changing or just performing a new version of loving correctly to get another chance? Because if you don't return after their so-called awakening, the mask slips again. They grow angry, bitter. They accuse you of being ungrateful, of not giving them a chance, of not seeing their effort. And just like that, the old cycle reappears, only dressed in better words. The fake awakening is the narcissist's final attempt when all else fails. They don't truly want to heal, they just want to feel they still have influence. And you, if you've come this far, you already know. Real love doesn't begin in deception, and real healing doesn't require someone else to validate it. You've come too far to return for a monologue. They don't need you to feel whole. They need to do the inner work, and you no longer owe them a role in your recovery. Stage 7. Stage when they realize you're never coming back. Your silence becomes a permanent sentence. There is a moment the narcissist fears most. Not when you're angry, not when you walk away, but when you don't come back, and they know this time it's forever. No goodbye, no calls, no subtle signals that you still remember. Not even anger, just absence. Complete, unshakable, quiet absence. And that, the total, unconditional, unexplained absence, is what forces them to face their deepest fear, being abandoned with no control left to reclaim. They once believed your silence was a tactic, a performance, that you'd come back because you always did. But day by day, as you remain gone, as you ask for nothing, not closure, not understanding, not even recognition, they realize the loop is broken, not with drama, but with pure, final peace. What unsettles them isn't your departure, it's the fact that you no longer need them to feel free. Nothing holds you anymore, no power remains, and for the first time they face the truth. You've moved beyond them. They go quiet, not from peace, but because they have nothing left to say. All their emotional weapons are useless, and your silence, once mocked, is now the heaviest sentence they've ever received. They might begin to look inward, not to change, but because there's no one left to reflect them. Their identity was built on reactions, on attention, on forgiveness, and now none of it is available. You, the one who once gave everything, need nothing from them, not love, not apology, not closure, nothing. They may drift into numbness or grasp for distractions, work, pleasure, spiritual talk, but nothing touches the emptiness that now echoes inside them. They control no one, and they don't know who they are without that control. But you don't need to know how they're doing, you don't need the final word, you don't need them to get it or wake up, because your growth no longer depends on their change. It lives in your choice to walk away, even knowing they never would. When they finally accept you're not coming back, they understand that your silence was never a strategy. It was a truth. Not a punishment, but a liberation. Not a pause, but an ending. And you, the person they once believed would always be within reach, is gone. Not in noise, not in conflict, but in peace. And all that's left is a void no one, not even they, can fill. Stage 8. They still try to pull you back into the pit of manipulation. You think it's over. You've walked away. No contact, no reaction. You've healed, rebuilt, moved on. But here's what you must understand. To the narcissist, the game is never truly over. When you don't come back, when they lose control over you, they don't see it as an ending. They see it as a temporary delay, something they can still reverse. This is when they begin the long play. They vanish, quietly, as if they've let go. But it's not surrender, it's strategy. They watch you from a distance, silently track how you're living, who you're with, whether you still hurt, whether there's a crack they can slip through to pull you back in, and when they sense vulnerability, a flicker of sadness, a reflective post, a wound that isn't fully closed, they reappear. Not loud, not dramatic, but soft, sweet, like nothing ever happened. A simple check-in. A "Hey, how have you been?" Or "This song reminded me of you." A casual social media like. It's not a greeting, it's bait. They don't need you to answer right away. They just need you to feel something. And if you flinch, if you so much as glance back, they'll know. The door isn't fully shut. Even after months or years, if they sense a way back in, they'll try. Because to them, you're not a closed chapter, you're interrupted supply. And if they can stir your empathy, your doubt, your compassion again, they'll begin the cycle from scratch. But this time, wearing a whole new mask. They're no longer cold, distant, or dismissive. Now they're evolved, humbled, healed. They've learned the hard way. They claim no one ever loved them like you did. It sounds convincing because it hits the part of you that once begged to be understood, the part that waited for change, the part that would have given anything to hear those words years ago. But remember, the most dangerous manipulation doesn't always come wrapped in rage. The most seductive lies wear the costume of love, awakening, and repentance. They'll try everything, not because they want you, but because they can't stand that you don't want them. That you've moved on without a backward glance makes them feel invisible, and they'll do anything to pull you back into the swamp they once controlled you in. This is when your strength must be greater than ever, because the hardest part isn't walking away. It's not going back, no matter what role they play, no matter how beautiful the words, no matter how remorseful they seem. You're not there to be controlled anymore. You don't need to forgive them to be good. You don't need to believe everyone deserves a second chance, because this is no longer their story, it's yours, and you're writing it now, with no supporting characters, no shadowy director, and no repeated scenes. Stage 9. When you become untouchable, freedom they can never reach. True freedom doesn't come when they stop manipulating you. It comes when you are no longer within their reach. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They might still mention your name, spin a new narrative, or try to provoke you, but everything falls into silence. Because you've disappeared from their psychological map. You're not running, you've simply outgrown their gravitational pull. You no longer react to guilt. You don't flinch at their texts, glances, or recycled apologies. They can't predict you. They can't corner you with words. They can't reinsert you into their story because you are no longer a supporting character. You are your own world now, closed, whole, impenetrable. At this point, they may spiral, go silent, then resurface, be kind, then cold, all just to test if you waver. But you are no longer that person. You are not bitter, not broken, not waiting. You're simply absent, and that they can't handle. For a narcissist, the worst fate is not being hated, it's being ignored. They don't know how to exist without reflection, without an audience, without someone to play against. When you leave all of that behind and continue living peacefully, joyfully, steadily, you become something they cannot control, cannot replace, and can no longer reach. And the truth is, you don't need to defeat them. You only need to deny them access to any part of you. You stop explaining, stop checking, stop wondering, stop writing unsent letters, stop dissecting the past to find where it all broke. You start spending that time rebuilding, loving without fear, but this time, loving yourself. And in that process, you touch what they never understood. Freedom isn't when someone finally apologizes, it's when you no longer need their apology to move on. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you're done renting them space in your mind. You don't stay silent to punish them. You stay silent because they're no longer worthy of your voice. You're not fighting anymore. You're not playing anymore. You are no longer someone in their orbit. You are yourself, someone who's walked through darkness, learned to recognize false light, and doesn't need anyone's awakening to live fully. They're still there, maybe trying one last time, maybe disappearing with bitterness. But you've reached the place they can never enter. You've chosen freedom, and this time, it's forever. You've walked through every stage, from confusion to devastation, from silence to clarity, from empathy to awakening. You've watched someone who once held all the power slowly unravel under the weight of a truth you never had to scream. And it didn't happen in chaos. It happened in the quiet power of your calm. This was never a story about revenge, not about proving them wrong. This was about remembering who you are, and who no longer deserves a place in your mind. The narcissist once wanted you to believe you were too weak to walk away, too emotional to let go, too fragile to live without them, But the truth is, you were stronger than they ever imagined, strong enough to stop fighting and simply step away. Healing wasn't when you smiled again after the pain. It was when you stopped needing them to understand, stopped waiting for them to change, stopped seeking validation from someone who always denied your worth. You began rebuilding, not to show them, but because you finally knew you deserved a life no longer defined by their manipulation. You are no longer the person torn between love and doubt, between hope and disappointment. You are the person who now knows peace doesn't come from someone else's apology, it's built by the boundaries you refuse to compromise. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's a fortress of self-respect. And if you're still on that path, know this: you are not alone. So many have crawled through that darkness, and you can be your own light now. You don't need their recognition. You don't need a goodbye. You need one thing only: to choose yourself every day. Without negotiation, without looking back.